Welcome to Apple Teeny, where Apple drama meets weirdly practical tech survival tips. Today's lineup has everything: a web browser trying to fix its reputation, an EV truck getting more expensive before it exists, and the deeply cursed possibility of ads inside your car map. The game preservation situation is one of those legal messes that sounds fake until you read it twice. Libraries can legally make up to 3 replacement copies of a game under one part of copyright law, but the DMCA still says breaking DRM is illegal, even if that's the only way to preserve the thing. So yes, one law says preserve it, another law says don't touch the lock. Incredible system, no notes. There are temporary exemptions every 3 years, and in the 2024 round, researchers still got denied remote access, which means if a library preserves a game, you may have to physically travel there just to use it. That's not preservation for the internet era, that's a pilgrimage. Apple looks like it wants off the Nvidia dependency ride, and honestly, of course it does. The interesting part is the reported strategy shift. Instead of the old hundreds of millions shopping spree for lots of smaller buys, Apple may be eyeing bigger single-asset acquisitions to lock down an AI server chip of its own. Think niche chip startups, including wafer-scale designs, building one giant chip tuned for a specific AI job. It's being compared to Pay Semi, the deal that helped set up Apple Silicon, which is exactly why people are paying attention. If Apple pulls this off, it won't just be buying talent, it'll be buying leverage. Apple Maps is going straight into Ford's upcoming universal EV platform in 2027, and on paper, this is the good version of car software news. We're talking battery preconditioning, road-level data, smoother routing, the kind of stuff that actually matters when you're trying to arrive somewhere with charge left and your dignity intact. The catch is the obvious fear that Apple keeps earning ads. Because once a company starts sprinkling ads into the App Store and Apple News, people naturally start asking whether the dashboard is next. Nobody wants turn-by-turn directions interrupted by a sponsored coffee detour when they're limping toward a charger 4%. Safari 27 is doing something very unglamorous and very necessary, fixing bugs. Most of the work is reportedly going into long-standing WebKit issues instead of chasing shiny new web standards, which is probably the correct move even if it's not exciting. Safari still trails Chrome and Firefox on W3C test pass rates barely over 90%, and critics say Apple's market position means it just doesn't feel enough pressure to move faster. That criticism feels fair, because every web person has at least one story that begins with, well, it worked everywhere except Safari. The weirdly fun part is WebKit's new Safari Model Context Protocol server, which lets AI agents connect to a live Safari instance and inspect the DOM, network activity, screenshots, even console output for autonomous debugging. That's a very 2026 sentence, but the goal is simple: get developers to actually test in Safari instead of doing Chrome only and hoping for the best. One of the smartest little product observations in this batch is how people use podcast transcripts now. With Overcast Transcripts, listeners aren't just reading along, they're skimming, searching, and jumping to exact moments way faster than scrubbing a tiny audio timeline like it's 2014. And the proposed next step is great: a closed caption-style overlay that highlights the current words in real time, so you can tap any word and jump straight there. That makes audio behave a little more like text without ruining the audio part, which is exactly the sweet spot. The modern Apple Store experience is getting compared to an overloaded DMV, and honestly, that might be rude to the DMV. Invisible queues, limited appointments, staff identified mostly by shirt color, missed appointments, random standing around with expensive confusion in your hands. It's a lot. The proposed fixes are almost hilariously basic: visible queue displays, more appointment capacity, and better traffic flow. Which also means the current pain isn't some mysterious unsolved physics problem, it's operations. Apple sells premium hardware in a retail environment that can feel like trying to board a flight during a weather delay. A very practical tip making the rounds is using separate Apple IDs for personal life and business life. If you're a developer, that keeps your personal purchases and device life away from App Store revenue and away from the possibility that some account drama hits everything at once. It's the same logic as separate personal and business bank accounts, except with more verification hoops and more Apple energy. Setting up the business side means a DUNS number, a real address, and a dedicated phone line, which is why plenty of people use low-cost VoIP numbers just to satisfy the phone requirement. The Slate electric truck was originally pitched at under 20 grand, with the federal EV tax credit doing some heavy lifting. Now that the $7,500 credit is gone, the base price is $24,950, which is still relatively low, but it lands very differently than under $20K. The vehicle itself is tiny and stripped down, and that's the whole bet. Slate isn't chasing suburban emotional support pickup buyers, it's chasing fleets. High volume, low margin, price-sensitive customers who care more about cost than chrome accents and giant screens. It's a very unsexy strategy, which is exactly what makes it interesting. There's also a pile of Mac productivity advice here, and the best stuff is the least glamorous. One favorite is unplugging a Thunderbolt hub at the end of the day, so your display, USB gear, and laptop setup all shut off at once. It creates just enough friction to stop the fake 5-minute task at 11:40 p.m. Using the desktop as a temporary project hub is another one, mainly as a workaround for cloud file weirdness, like Dropbox, making some big project zips unreliable. Dangerous for clutter, great for active work. The automation rule is refreshingly sane. Only build it if the time you spend making it will pay off for years. One example was a Stream Deck button that starts and stops recording, posts live messages, and organizes files. Claude shows up here as a very practical assistant for copywriting and debugging scripts, including one that checks whether an EV is plugged in and sends a push notification, which is the kind of tiny automation that saves real annoyance. A few standout tools: Swift Bar for turning the menu bar into a live dashboard, Text Sniper for grabbing text from places that won't let you select it, Clean Shot X for better screenshots, Blip for moving giant files faster than AirDrop, Timery for exposing where your day actually went, and Isotope RX Dialog Isolate for rescuing echoey recordings with simple controls. Also, Screens plus Tailscale for remote Mac access is the kind of setup people become weirdly evangelical about because it just works. That's it for Apple Teeny. If your browser works in Safari, your Apple Store appointment happens on time, and your car map stays ad-free, congratulations on living in the future before the rest of us. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.